Hey guys. So this time around, I want to talk about what for some people might be a taboo topic or something that we don't generally talk about, but is definitely a really important issue for our society. It's something that, has been a problem essentially since the beginning of human history. And solutions have been proposed over the years, but it never seems like anybody sort of acts on them. And an idol of mine, and I think a lot of people's, is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the late Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And it's interesting because he specifically had some views on this particular topic that might not have been as popular as some of his views on racism and race equality, but in my opinion are just as important. So the issue that I'm specifically referring to is poverty. And in the United States of America, poverty is something that has plagued specifically minority groups like Black or African American people um, seemingly relentlessly. And I don't think that minorities are the only people that suffer from poverty, but there's definitely a larger percentage. And I think that that's one of the reasons why Dr. Martin Luther King focused on it in a lot of the work that he did, because his philosophy was all about equality for all people. And so when I'm looking at the world today and I'm seeing that there are still so many people that are living in poverty, I wonder to myself, why haven't we're standing on the shoulders of giants. Why haven't we taken the things that have historically been proposed and said and truly tried to act on them? And if you think about it, it makes sense, right? Because our society is structured in a self-centered way. It encourages people to think about themselves, try to win, try to achieve above others, but we have a tendency not to prioritize the needs of the many. And so there's been some talk recently about what is called universal basic income. And I think that this is a really interesting idea. It's actually something that Dr. King himself proposed, and admittedly, previous presidential candidates like Andrew Yang, who have sort of championed for this idea, have shared their influence, the influence that they took from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on this topic. And while it may seem like really taboo or like we have a capitalist society, so why would we be trying to implement UBI, which seems like a socialist practice? I think if we really take a look at our society as a whole, we can sort of understand that it doesn't necessarily work for everyone. And Dr. Martin Luther King specifically had an idea that every person in this world should be guaranteed at least a standard middle class living. You should be able to you should be able to have a home. You should be able to take care of the expenses that you have to take care of your family. You should be able to eat without worrying about where your next meal is coming from. These are basic human needs: shelter, food, water, and financial well-being. These are things that are not guaranteed to people in the modern world, which to me is alarming. And so my challenge is to sort of think, how can we resolve that with the tools that are at our disposal today? And I think one good example, right, is during the coronavirus pandemic, when things really started getting bad, our leaders and Congress and the Senate and the president decided, hey, let's actually act on this. Let's put money in the American people's hands, in their wallets, and let's give them a fighting chance. And it's amazing to me that it took something like a novel coronavirus to actually bring that out, when there are people who are living in similar financial situations on a day-to-day basis, regardless of if there is a pandemic. And so it begs the question, why did we wait until now to implement that solution instead of implementing it, you know, for the problem which is ongoing, which it's a fact that poverty is an ongoing problem in this world, in the United States, and a lot of other first world countries. If you look at the disparity between wealth in America's rich and poor, it's appalling, honestly. And I really think that we should start to rethink the way that we prioritize each other's needs. You know, we know that as human beings, there are basic needs. We need food, we need water, we need to be able to provide for ourselves. Okay, so why is it that we can't do that for every person before we start to think about things like capitalism and getting as much as you can as an individual? If everybody doesn't even have the bare minimum, then should we really be prioritizing capitalistic ideas? Now, I'm not saying that capitalism is bad. I'm just saying that maybe we need to strike a bit more of a balance. And if we fall back on the ideas of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., you can see that this isn't new. This isn't a new problem, and this isn't something that we're going to solve in a day, but it's been decades, right? It's been decades since Martin Luther King Jr. proposed the idea of universal basic income, and we're still just now having the conversation. So I think one thing that a lot of people don't know is that this is an idea that's been around in this country since the 1960s. And this is something that can potentially alleviate the problem of poverty in this country. Another thing that Dr. Martin Luther King talked about a lot is how we sort of try to beat around the bush. And politicians will come up with, like even Lyndon B. Johnson at the time of Dr. Martin Luther King's movements, a lot of politicians would try to bring up solutions of, okay, let's do education reform, let's do housing reform, or let's try to put these programs in place so that underserved communities and people who are more prone to being in poverty have a better chance at getting the tools that they need to be able to dig themselves out of the hole, which is, you know, that doesn't make any sense, right? If somebody's already in a hole, how are they going to dig themselves out? And so there is the problem. And so what Dr. Martin Luther King proposed is we solve poverty first, and then we start to think about how to restructure other parts of, you know, our government, other parts of our world, and other parts of our culture, such that everybody, you know, has high or well-paying jobs, everybody has access to a good education, and everybody has the ability to own a home. You know, various things that are sort of coming up on the next stage after people have the bare minimum. And I think that's a really powerful thing, you know, because by doing that, we're prioritizing people's needs, which is something that we don't necessarily do now. Yes, we have Social Security. Yes, we have these other platforms, but we don't prioritize people's needs. Our society is not built in a public centric way. It's built for a capitalist, self centered way. And again, I'm not saying that we can't have capitalism and a public centered economy and country and world, but I'm saying that we need to rethink things and we need to find a balance. So, with that, I've sort of offered a little bit of a history lesson. I've gone into some of the ideas of the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and sort of express some of my own. And I think that by all of us giving this a little bit more thought and really starting to think about what is the first priority in our lives and in the lives of the people around us, we can start to build a better world together. But it takes a change in mindset, and we have to open our hearts to each other. We have to really start to think about what is important in this world, what is important in our lives. And I think for a lot of us right now, the well-being of those around us and of our community doesn't really come to mind first. And so I just want to challenge everybody to think differently. That's all. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video this week. Kevin wasn't able to join me this time around, but he'll be back on pretty soon. You know, he's been pretty busy moving into a new apartment, so congratulations to him. But the CJ Hope team, I myself, Dion, and Kevin, we're going to keep bringing you guys new videos, and we're going to keep trying to educate the public and change the mindset, change the paradigm. Peace.